evening, everyone. We are in a special business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, July 25th. Welcome Squalin, peace plus Squamish, Oema, which means welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of council. If there are a few amendments, including some correspondence that we got last minute, as well as a item that was brought forward from this afternoon. Move adoption of the agenda, moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We do have a whole bunch of people here to, in particular with regard to a letter, and so I thought we'd just move item 6B, nope, 6A1. Is that right? 6A1, just to the front of the agenda. This is a letter regarding a proposed development that is on Buckley Avenue. It's right adjacent and fronting the streets that Squamish Elementary School is on. And it's a letter outlining concerns, and there's some young people who have articulated their concerns. This development is not scheduled to be in front of council for, it's in staff's hands right now. We will probably see it for several months. But I think there's some good comments and feedback in that letter, so perhaps we should refer this to staff to take into consideration as they move through the process on this file. Do you want to speak to it anymore, Jonas?
No, just that this development will be going forward to advisory design panel first before it comes to council, and there may be a couple of reiterations of advisory design panel review. So it's at least 2 months away from coming to council.
And perhaps the advisory design panel can be made appraised to some of the issues that have been raised in this letter and others that we've received on this particular piece of property in the past.
Okay.
So motion to refer to staff, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Chappell. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Any? Motion carries. Next up, we have delegation petitions and proclamations. First up is Marika Donnelly and Michelle Winslow from the BCSPCA.
Hi. Thanks so much for having us here. For those who don't know me, I'm Marika Donnelly. I am the branch manager of the BCSPCA Sea to Sky branch. And this is Michelle Winslow. Michelle is a member of our branch's community council, volunteer, and also the BCSPCA has put in an offer to purchase Unit B, 1005 Industrial Way. As our current trailer facility, if you've already seen it, we're in the public works yard. It has exceeded its lifespan a long time ago. It is imperative that the Sea to Sky branch of the BCSPCA secure a new facility. We have been extensively searching for a suitable location for the past 2 years. This property is the first location that has met our needs that we have found. Without securing a new location, the future of our local branch is uncertain. The property we are interested in will require a temporary use permit to be issued and a rezone in the future. This is one of many steps we're currently working on. As a nonprofit organization, we rely heavily on the support of volunteers and the community. Not only are we seeking your support to assist us through the temporary use permit application and future rezone, but we are also asking for the district to waive the fees for the temporary use permit, building permits, and rezone applications.
And Ms. Paul, you did have a number that cleared. So the request is about $3,240, $3,240, and that is $900 for the TUP, $2,250 for the rezoning application, and $90 for the building permit. This is outlined here. And you anticipate the TUP coming forward to council in the near future? Is the application in?
The application is in. This actually qualifies as a delegated temporary use permit, so it will be a faster process. the expectation is that this will eventually turn into a rezoning application. So that would just deal with that aspect as well, which will come to council.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's no public process with the TVT, it's a delegated TUP, it doesn't have to go through public process,
There still will be a notification.
notification, but not a
Not a hearing, no.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions? I'll make a quick comment. Good for you. I know you've been looking for a long time, so I'm glad to see you're moving along that way. And as a really valuable nonprofit, I don't have a problem absorbing these fees within the district budget. We have to determine where we find those monies. I don't know if there's contingency in planning and building to do it, or I know our council contingency is getting kind of low, but
Thank you, Mayor Heitzman. Your contingency right now is sitting at $24,915.
we've got 6 months left or 5 months left in the year.
Correct.
Could we don't anticipate the rezoning fees till 2018?
It depends when the application would be made.
But the TUP would be for a 3-year period, and so the
Yes.
rezoning, so we could do 900 TUP now if we felt our contingency and reconsider the rest in the contingency at the end of the year, or put it in next year's budget deliberations. Correct?
If I may, I would also add the building permit to that, because there may be building work that's required in the building this year if this proceeds.
Okay, so I will put forward that we waive $1,000 now, so that's $990 for the TUP and the building permit, and that rezoning fees be waived in the 2018 budget process. All right, is that an okay motion? And if there's contingency at the end of the year, we can revisit it and make it then. But essentially, we're saying yes, we'd like to waive these. It's just a matter of where we're pulling the money from. Seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? You guys provide a really valuable service, and I'm hoping you're successful in how you
A lot of hard work to get here. Great.
I'll
Thank
call the
you.
question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up, we have John Harvey from the Mancom River Access Society.
Good evening. So I sent a letter relating this story, the story of having worked for 4 months and somehow forgot the Vancouver Coastal Health outhouse permits. And it's caused a bit of a problem, a bit of a setback. We have no money left, as we've sort of tapped out all our finance fundraising locally. And so I apologize for that, but in the middle of 4 months of volunteering to build this infrastructure, somehow I forgot that email attachment. And we had the water put in today. We've had a Binney Engineering measure. They'll measure again tomorrow. I would bet my life on it that there's no leakage in these things. They're very sealed, but they don't follow the new CSA standards. I hope that we can negotiate a monitoring management program with them, with BCH, in which I would suggest they're bomb-proof now. We could do a same test every 2 years for the next 10, and then perhaps every year after that, in which at some point part of the plan would be to replace them with the new plastic holding tanks. To do that tomorrow would be $15,000. So I do hope that BCH will negotiate a management structure as long as we prove that they are leak-proof, sealed. So in the interim, we need to rent some outhouses until BCH and MRAS can work together and work out a negotiation on the sewerage application permit. So that may be 2 or 3 weeks. The cost of 3 outhouses to be rented and cleaned weekly or bi-weekly is a few $100s. I'm hoping that that isn't an issue so far along in this process. And again, I apologize for my forgetfulness in this last 4 months of very busy work. As you can all imagine, MRAS is really just one guy. it's been a big project. So I appreciate all the support that council has given me over the last 4 years.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I visited the facility a couple weeks ago. You've done a fantastic job. It's a great amenity in the community and really needed, especially as we have these high fire seasons. We have more pressure from campers because they're not going to the interior this year. And so from my perspective, I want to make sure you get open as soon as possible. So I'm happy to support, $1,000 should get you 3 porta potties for a month. So I'm happy to support that. I'm hoping council will too. That'll get you open. That gives you 3-4 weeks to go through your testing and get an engineer to basically sign off, and hopefully VCH will take that engineer certification as meeting their criteria under their permitting process.
Unfortunately, Benny is not comfortable signing off on them. He will provide the data, the hard data, the evidence that says they're sealed. But signing off on it because he wasn't part of the design in the building is difficult for an engineering company to do, but I'm still hopeful that the hard evidence is enough for VCH to accept they're sealed units.
Okay. Questions for John? Yeah, Karen? Councilor Leah?
I was just going to ask, I know the mayor has said $1,000 for the outhouses, but you also mentioned in your letter the use of the water truck and waiving the tipping fees for testing the things.
Yeah, and
But
we
maybe
can
that's a
absolutely
What-
include that. I think they've already supplied the water truck.
Mhm.
Staff's
Okay.
already sort of trying to facilitate this, because the council has been very supportive of this project and wants to make sure we can make it open so we can, the purpose of this is to get those people that are camping illegally and give them a good, affordable option, a safe option. So yes, my intention was to, so I think Councilor Elliott is putting forward a motion that we allocate from council contingency $1,000 and support of our water truck and waiving of tipping fees at our sewage treatment plant to facilitate the ongoing development of the Manitoba River Access Society camp. Seconded by Councilor Rice. Councilor Rochelle.
Yeah, I completely support this, and I'm also just wondering about, is there anything we can do with the engineering? That I know John said that maybe he wouldn't sign off on it. Is there any more work that has to be done with that to ensure that?
Well, the next option is, of course, lifting the outhouses and lining or replacing them, and neither of which are really necessary at all, from my perspective, and from his perspective either. But signing off on it from an engineering overview and covering everyone's liability, they're not comfortable doing it. And I think we'll be hard pressed to find some, because I didn't take photos and da-da-da-da.
Let's cross that bridge when we.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
I just want to make sure we can put it
Hopefully
into
it's
the
not
budget next
necessary.
year
If we
we'll
need
cross
to.
that if we need to.
Yeah.
Councilor Kent.
Terrific job, John. You've been like Sisyphus pushing a rock on this thing back and forth, and
Yeah.
totally support it.
Thank you.
Well done.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. Thank you.
We have a few timed items. First up is staff report, A1 Community Planning Infrastructure, notice on title, Section 57, Community Charter, 38010 September.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Chad William. I'm a building inspector for the District of Squamish. I have two motions in this report tonight. One of which is that the council instructs the corporate officer to file a bylaw and building code notice, contravention notice respecting property at 38010 7th Avenue, land title and survey authority under section 57 of the community charter. Essentially what we have is a pre-existing home existed on this property. This is the new home that you're looking at that we have no permits for to date. So they've gotten to a certain point, and we stopped in 2014. It continued on, and then recently again in 2017 there was some further movement, and we've we want to get on top of this as far as getting the appropriate permitting in place. There's some significant hurdles. So this is the front view of the property. This, what we're looking at, might be in better context in the next photo. This is, the foundation is the red line, and the white line is our Squamish dike that was altered in order to accommodate this foundation. So it's right up against the Squamish dike. So this is the rear of the property looking to the south along the top of the dike. This is the property in question here on 7th Avenue or 7th Lane. I've put in a brief summary just as to the relevant legislation that would apply or does apply that we don't yet have any application for. Since the most recent stop work order, there's been a fair bit of communication with the landowner. There seems to be somewhat of a willingness to get things moving forward, but we've yet to get applications in place. As I think because it's been 7 or 8 years in the making, there's some catch up, there's some homework I think that he's working on right now in order to get a complete application. The other notice that we'd like to table is that council instructs, and this is under council directive, but that council instructs the corporate officer under discretion to commence legal action and proceeding in relation to the property legally described as Lot 12, Block 7, District Lot 486, Plan 3960, again 380107, to seek injunctive relief in the action or proceeding in order to bring this building into compliance with the District of Squamish bylaws should compliance not be achieved within 6 months of today's date.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Councilor Pratt?
Just on the dike there, do we have an easement on that dike? Or
There is
private
no
property?
easement on that dike. We have no statutory right-of-way in that
So
location.
someday we are going to want that, aren't we?
Someday, you're absolutely right. I have spoken to our engineering department. I know there's work at some point that's slated to be done there, so there's...
That in our flood management plan, it calls for a rebuild of that dike.
Correct. I believe that's correct.
Would you take any of that into consideration when you're...
Well, as it stands right now, that I put in here, the provincial legislation does apply. So because we don't yet have permits for this building, we would treat it as though it was a new build being applied for today, and those provincial standards would apply.
Councilor Pratt?
You know,
I'm done.
it's, of the other, there's houses all the way along that dike. They've all encroached on the dike. Are we treating each one in the exact same manner, or?
The other houses on the property, I think there's 4 or 5 other on that side
Yeah.
of the road. I believe they all have permitting to date. So there's, whether that predated the diking legislation, that's something I would have to look at. But because this was built entirely without permits, we just don't know sort of timeline or chronology.
Yeah, I know the previous owner, there was a little old lady that owned it before. She was getting the new owner to renovate it while she was still alive, and then she passed away and left the house in.
Okay.
And so I think that, yeah, it was done in pure ignorance, not
Oh, I don't.
malicious reasons, but.
I don't believe there's any malintent. It's just we're definitely way behind the 8 ball on this.
Right.
And this was brought to your attention in 2014?
2014
So it's been
initially.
going on for 3 years to try to get compliance?
Yeah, it's been the original contact that we made in 2014. We did speak to the owner, and there was a plan to get an application in, which never happened. So we're trying to make sure that we get on top of this and work towards compliance. In recent weeks, I've had some reasonable conversations with the owner. His intent is to try and get the ducks in a row, but because this is retroactive, it's a much slower process. That's why we don't want this to slide any further along.
Councilor Pratt?
Yes, thanks. I mean, there was a house there
Correct.
before. It's not like, there's not a permit out on the renovation, but the existing house was there.
Yes.
So are the setbacks going to affect our decisions?
Through you, Mayor Heinzman. We've been looking at the LGA, and again, we're limited in our information that we have on the property. We've requested through the owner to compile all the information on the original home and this home, but essentially the old house, the only thing that is left of the old house is about a 6x8 front stoop. The entire foundation was replaced, the entire house built on top of it. There was change to layout and design. There's no dispute that there was a house there previously, but I believe our archives, we don't have record of that
Oh, we
house.
just have aerial photos.
Exactly, some
That's
chronology.
probably all they'll have, but my only concern is, and I mean, we'll move forward with this, but my only concern is we're gonna go, oh, this doesn't fit in the setbacks. This house doesn't conform. You're too close to the dike. I mean, I don't mind the conversation being, you know, the foundation looks okay, but the framing's wrong here, this is wrong there, but I'd sure hate to see us get into a pickle where we're going after the guy for not having proper setbacks and sitting too close to a dike.
If there are variances required, they would have to come to council for
Correct.
consideration,
That's
like
correct.
any other development.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be a board variance, I don't believe in this case.
Okay, so there's a recommended motion that council instructs the corporate officer to file a building bylaw and building code contravention notice respecting the property. I know, I'm just reading what's up here. Respecting the property legally described as lot 12, block 7, district lot 486, plan 3960, located at 38010 7th Avenue, and the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under sections 57 of the Community Charter. There's a whole second part. If the landowner would like to speak to the issue, you have that opportunity.
The landowner contacted us today, Your Honor, and respects the process, but has decided they don't want to appear in front of council.
And the second part of this is that council instruct the corporate officer in her discretion to commence a legal action or proceeding in relation to the property legally described, I won't describe again, and seek injunction relief in that action or proceeding in order to bring this building into compliance with the district health bylaws should compliance not be achieved within 6 months from the date of this meeting. Is this just to avoid it coming back in 6 months for a council decision?
And
Ms. Arthurs?
Mayor Heinzman, at the last hearing, Section 57 hearing that we had, there was consensus around the table that council wanted to keep people's feet to the fire with gaining compliance, that just putting a Section 57 on title may not be enough, that we should have the ability to go for an injunction depending on what the life safety issues and building code issues are around the lack of compliance with the building department. So that's what this motion is. It's the direction from the last Section 57 that came forward.
And we could do it now, or we could do it in 6 months.
We can bring back an update in 6
I
months if
just want
that's
to make
what.
sure council understands it. Council, any questions at this point? Anyone want to move forward? Move both
I'll
pieces?
move, yes, both pieces forward.
Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Riss. Don't see any hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor
you.
Council.
The next item is our development variance permit number 128, water tower sign structure. In the business park.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, I'm a planner here at the District of Squamish, presenting you today Development Variance Permit 128, located at 1257 Commercial Way for the water tower sign structure. I'd like to first start with a brief overview of the history of the sign structure. On August 20th, 2013, Council approved Development Permit DP 342 for an industrial development on 1201 Commercial Way. The DP included a comprehensive sign plan for a water tower sign structure on property 1257 Commercial Way. The height of the water tower structure exceeded the sign bylaw height regulations and was acknowledged within the report to council. A comprehensive sign plan within the DP can vary the sign bylaw. So when DP 342 was approved, so too was the sign bylaw height variance. No variance to the height of the structure required by the zoning bylaw was considered or approved at this time. On July 26, 2016, Council approved DP 413 for the Sea to Sky Business Park Phase 1 for 1257 Commercial Way, where the structure is intended to be located. The original DP application included the structure upon which the sign was to be located. At this time, staff identified the need for a zoning bylaw height variance for the sign structure, as it also exceeded the zoning bylaw height maximums. The applicant preferred to address this variance separate from DP 413, which is why it is now being presented to council as a separate DBP this evening. Although development permits can vary the sign bylaw through a comprehensive sign plan, the zoning bylaw cannot be. The Local Government Act has very specific regulations and procedures municipalities must undergo for council to approve or reject a variance to the zoning bylaw. The steps include notification of the variance to adjacent property owners and opportunity to submit comments prior to and be heard by council at the time of variance consideration. This brings us to this evening's development variance permit 128. So the sign property is within the official community plan land use designation employment and industrial. It's located in Specialized Business Service Center I-9 and within the phase 1 of this zone's development. The lot is wrapped on the north and west by Specialized Industrial I-8 zone, and the Home Depot is situated to the south of the property, and the property to the east is zoned Highway Commercial C9, presently undeveloped. This is the proposed location for the water tower sign structure on the corner of Discovery Way and Commercial Way. A variance is zoning bylaw section 39B.3 to increase the maximum allowable height of a principal structure from 1068 meters to 17.67 meters is required to issue a building permit for the structure that will hold the signage program. The height of the sign structure, as well as the signage program, will be highly visible from the adjacent properties, the rest of the business park, and the highway, as the sign will be extending approximately 7 meters above any adjacent building in the business park. As part of the variance in 2017, staff have recommended some design changes to help incorporate the sign into the new Hardwired for Adventure branding, as well as the district's new wayfinding designs, as part of the sign marks the location of the business park. On the screen are images of the before and after changes to the signage program section of the water tower, which can also be found in more detail in the report. To the right is a copy of the district's new directional wayfinding sign design, which was replicated in the modified water tower design. Below that is a rendering of the sign at night. The sign bylaw allows for freestanding signs in industrial zones to be directly or indirectly lit. This project was posted to the district's Development Showcase webpage. The district received no request for a public information meeting, and no public meeting was held. Notices for the zoning variances were mailed and delivered to residents within 100 meters of the property as per legislative requirement, and 6 comments were received today by business park tenants in support of the variance. They were received prior to this report and should be attached for your information this evening. The recommendation from staff is that the District of Squamish authorize the issuance of development variance permit number 128 as presented for 1257 Commercial Way in Squamish.
Council, do you have any questions for staff at this point? I'm trying to understand the sequence of this. Because I know, in my experience on council, signs are very often very much part of the conversation, particularly when there's a variance. And I don't think we don't have any signs in Squamish that vary it to this dramatic, 30 plus feet. It's a significant variance on our sign bylaw. So, and I can't imagine council not speaking to a 30-foot variance on our sign, on any sign. So I'm trying to understand how how it went through the very first DP phase, which was for the development. Then I'm just trying to understand the sequencing and how it was approved but not approved, and why there wasn't a variance. I know it was outlined in the report, but I'm just trying to understand how we got to where we are, and I'm not there yet. Maybe you can help me out.
There may be.
This sets a very big precedent, and this was certainly never my envisionment for the business park to have these, 60, 70 foot tall signs. So you can see from the highway all the way into the business park. I mean, just can imagine these sprouting up now. So I just really want to understand the decision-making, so we're being fair in that process.
Definitely. So if you can, I know it's a small image, but the top image there is a clip from the development permit from 342, and this was the comprehensive sign plan. And that development permit was for a different property than where the sign is now being, or where the sign is being proposed to be put. And so this maybe was partly why there was some confusion, or why it wasn't front and center for this development. Does that?
So the DP 342 is not for the same property as DP 413?
At the time, I believe it was the same property, but then it was consolidated or it was subdivided. And so now DP 413 was for a different property than that one.
Same property, but different property. Okay, I think I'm understanding where it got weird. Mr.
If I could add to it, the height was identified in the original staff report for the development permit to the sign. It's just that the DP contained everything except for the variance.
In DP 413?
That's right.
And in DP 342. So DP 342 spoke to the fact that there was a sign at this height, and that they would vary the sign bylaw, but they had no, there was no reference to varying the zoning bylaw.
DP 413 did not contain anything to do with the sign. We had some conversations with the applicant. We suggested that they included it in that DP, and the decision was made not to do that.
To do it separate?
To do it separate.
I think I'm understanding. Councillor Clark?
I remember when this one came through, I remember the conversation about it. I remember the conversation about the height. I remember questions being asked whether it will be able to, people will be able to go to the top and have a lookout on it. So I definitely remember it. And at that time, I mean, I was supportive of it. I didn't, it was like focusing, the center of the turnaround, the center of our business park. I remember all that stuff. And when I read the report, it just looked to me like the planner said, it was just, everything was done except the variance. We're just going through the mechanical end of doing the variance now. Not deciding again whether it goes in or not.
Well, no, we are deciding.
We are, but
Otherwise,
but
it wouldn't be in front of us.
it's in front of us because everything went through except the variance. It's like when you rezone a piece of property and somebody forgets to do the 5-foot setback on the side, then you have to bring it back in to do the 5-foot setback. Like, oh, that was rezoned, but sorry, we forgot to do the setback.
Is that a comparable analysis?
Not exactly. In a way, it is. It's a process that wasn't done, so we're following up with that. But it's up to council's discretion to decide whether the sign of this height goes in there or not.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, what's that, Councillor Schwab?
Is it possible to actually make it a useful water tower that actually stores rainwater and then water the entire business park with it?
Not, unless we reject the variance, it's not the proposal.
It's not a,
Any other questions?
Well, just there's letters in our package referring to this tower from potential leases in the development that supported it.
Yes, staff's already called on that. Councillor Race?
I'm going to move the staff recommendation. Also
No,
to
you
the
can't,
second.
we can't, we have to go to the public.
Oh, okay, and I'll stop.
Yeah, question, Councillor Elliott?
Is there a reason the variance is so large? Is it like, why not 5 more meters or 3 more meters? Like, why this?
So we're treating this as a technical issue rather than the form and character issue. Our understanding is that that has been decided in terms of the form and character of the sign by the previous development permit. The height is significant, yes.
So either we take it as is, or we don't?
The proposal in front of, is for the variance that's in front of us.
Yes, we've had a number of conversations with the applicants in terms of revisiting the design of the sign. And we've had some successes in terms of making the lettering consistent with our directional signage.
Can I ask another question? Will it be lit all night long, or does it have an off switch?
Carrie?
I don't know the answer to that question, but the applicant is here and may be able to speak to it.
We'll go to the public. Can't get. So as this is a variance, a development variance permit, we do afford the public and the proponent to speak to the variance. Is the proponent in the room? Would they like to speak to the variance? Yeah, come on up. Come up, state your name. Just give us your address and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
My name is Carl Funk. I represent the applicant, Solterra Development. So I'd want to speak a bit about the process. I was involved in 2012 when we first brought the industrial park development permit to the district. At that time, the water tower was always in our drawings. In our pre-application meetings with the district, it's always been there. And at that time, it was the discussion from planning was what they understood the need for visibility from the highway, and the discussion, okay, what's tall and fits in the character of Squamish, and it's just a natural fit. So the water tower is something that's just naturally tall, has that height. So it's always been a part of our application from pre-application to when we actually applied for the business park. When we applied for the business park, the first development permit was building 1 as part of the business park. And at that time, it was 1 lot. So the location has never changed. It's always been the exact same location, the exact same height. It's always been there. When we went to development permit, a lot of it's been digging through old emails from past planners and past people coordinating the project. The conversation did come up was how would we vary the height? Because the height was understood that this was an acceptable height from the planning staff at that time. But how would we go about the process and framework of policy to actually change the height and what's allowed? And the recommendation from the planning department at that time, and this is in the council planning report, this isn't anything just in hidden emails, this was said to council, was we can do it through a comprehensive signage plan. And what the planners are saying now is while that's correct, you can vary the signage bylaw through a comprehensive signage plan. It wasn't addressed, it was never brought up to us, the applicants, or to council that maybe as a development variance permit was required, because still the height is beyond what the zoning requires. So it was either missed or it was felt that it wasn't needed at that time. And the reason why it might not have been needed is because there are certain items in the zoning bylaw that don't require variances for height. One of them is a water tank and one of them is a monument. This was presented as a water tower monument. It received full support from the design panel. So it went through design panel as a water tower in that first development, received full support and even complimentary comments. And then planning, again, complimentary comments back at that time in 2013, and as well as from council at that time. So we feel this is more of a clerical issue, and it's been, the reason we feel it more is because our variance permit fee was waived as well. It's been understood that maybe this is just, we might have missed this, or just a different interpretation. So we fear it's more checking the box. But our tenants in this building have always trusted the approved development permit drawings issued by the district, and they're calling us, why isn't our sign up? Why isn't our sign up? We need visibility. So it is an important issue for us. It's something we want to take care of right away. But we see it more of just more of a clerical issue rather than discussing whether the height is acceptable or not, because we've been told it's been acceptable from 2012 up until it was approved. In terms of the lighting, it's a great question. In terms of it's never come up. If it was something that we could want to work with planning, we'd be willing to do it. But it's never come up whether they turn off at a certain hour. We've tried to address some of the lighting concerns from planning with this process of going again with the development variance permit. Planning's brought up some excellent comments, so maybe we should try to make this more complementary or more commonalities with the district's wayfinding plan. So we've tried to do that, and that includes some changes to the lighting. So before we had a gooseneck lighting, planning felt maybe that wasn't appropriate, so we've made those changes. We've tried to work with planning, and they've made some create changes, and we continue to work with them. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. That's what I'm trying to get down to. Is it a clerical oversight or not? I'm trying to understand that. No, so, getting there, I think you helped clarify a little bit. I'm trying to, when you bring something like this to the ADP, you inform them that it doesn't meet our sign bylaw, that there's a 30-foot variance on this? Or do you just go in and say, if you like it, doesn't meet our DP guidelines, not our sign bylaw? Like, did the ADP supporting this, did they know there was a 30-foot variance proposed?
When we bring projects now to ADP, we do present that there's variances to the sign bylaw if they're not fitting within the dimensions, and we do present that. And they are comments that ADP acknowledges as well, and we'll actually bring that up to staff if they are meeting it or not meeting it. And then when this went to advisory design panel for the original development permit, it was approved and it was well received. So I've watched those ADP meeting minutes and it was well received.
Okay, so this hasn't been to ADP recently, we're talking 2013, it went to ADP?
Yes.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Schwab?
Not to the staff.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember this being presented as a water tower, and that's why I asked the obvious question of, is water storage in the water tower? And remember staff saying that water towers were exempt from the variance. So that's where I got the idea that perhaps we're storing rainwater and it can be used for that. And and then the monument piece, I'm unclear as to how it can be a monument to anything but commercial signage. So
It's not a monument, it's a sign.
No,
it's just a sign.
Thank you. We're asking for a variance to our zoning.
That's right. It's a sign structure.
And a monument thing doesn't apply. We're varying a sign. Don't get distracted. It's not a monument.
There's no possibility to actually make it something useful, because that would be the difference between me supporting it and not. Maybe it being something more useful than a 35-foot monument to science.
So, monument to science. It's extrapolation. And I now that you say that, that's a conversation I recollect happening. Is like, how do we make this purposeful, not just, how do we make this a monument, not just a sign?
Yeah.
I wish I could go back and, did you watch this video from 2003? Do we have it?
The council meeting?
Yeah.
I did. And it was very quick. Yeah. There wasn't very many comments around the sign. It was well received.
And did this go to committee before it went to council?
I'm not sure about that.
Because I recall quite a bit of a conversation.
Yeah.
So does Councillor Brown, so does Anyway, any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I have to go to the public. You can't move it yet.
Oh. Okay, sorry.
Is there anyone, don't act too keen. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the DVP?
I got a question for you.
Please come up, state your name and street address, and if you're yourself, a business or an organization.
My name is Tyler Ovington. I live at 38439 Buckley Avenue. I also do business in Squamish. I was just wondering if there's anything to deter people from climbing this sign monument water tower. There must be some sort of safety. Just when I saw the photo of it, I could imagine.
Beside a climbing gym.
Well, I know there is a just a question for a sign. It might be appealing to some younger people to try to climb that 70-foot tower. So is there something to prevent people from climbing?
Staff?
Not at this point. There will be some seating at the bottom of the tower structure, but the design hasn't incorporated any safety features, which is a valid concern.
Yeah.
I would suggest we deal with that.
It could be reviewed at the building permit stage when they do assess the structure.
Reviewed? Okay. Thank you. Do you have any more questions?
No, that was it, just the climbing.
Thanks. Heard me. Thank you. Question?
No, just with perspective, I think it might behoove the applicant to think about the liability of such a kind of unguarded structure at that height.
That was actually my immediate thought, was the climbing gym's there. We have lots of people trying to climb it. Anyway, any more, I'll call again to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this DVP? I'll call for a second time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this DVP? And I'll call for a third time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this DVP? There being no one, just looking to council if there are any further questions. Don't see any. Councillor Race?
I'll move the staff recommendation, and I'll speak to it in a second.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. Councillor Race.
Thank you, and like others, I do recall this coming to council last term, and I don't recall what I said, if I said anything actually, but I remember thinking it was kind of a funky thing, and it justified the obvious extra height. It's about 22 or 23 feet over height, not quite 30, 7 meters. So it essentially, from my perspective, form and character were determined by the last council. And so really the reason we're here tonight dealing with this is because of a procedural misstep, which I'm not going to point fingers, but it might have been our planning department, it might have been the applicant, or a combination of both. But it is more in the nature of a clerical error in my view. I don't want to move the goalposts. I think that's not healthy for an organization like ours. To me, this has already been decided, and so that's the reason for my support of this application this time.
Councillor Pryor.
Yeah, same as Councillor Race. I actually kind of like it, and in thinking back, at one time we did a massive charrette for the community. And one of the urban planners that was paid to come up and give us ideas actually said we should be putting towers up, pedestrian access towers up in lots of locations. So if the
This is
owner
not a
really
pedestrian
wants
access
to,
tower, Councillor Pryor.
if the owner really wants to get people to this location, put a set of stairs and a viewing tower up there.
Councillor Blackman-Wolf and Councillor Spell.
I'm not in favor of this variance. I mean, I'm okay with the design of the sign, and I think it's an attractive sign, but I don't see why it can't respect the current allowance, which is 35 feet. I mean, that's still a pretty substantial sign. And I'll remind council of the fact that, you know, on previous occasions, we've declined to allow variances on our sign bylaw right on the highway. And that wasn't even a height variance. So I think that's going to be an unnecessary intrusion into the skyline of Squamish, and I think we can probably be assured that it will be lit 24/7. I've never seen commercial signs that get turned off very frequently, especially if it's going to be that prominent. So I don't support the variance.
Councillor Chappelle.
Thanks. I'm having a lot of difficulty with this one because for the exact same reasons as Councillor Blackman-Wolf lays out, this is the only reason that it's that high is to hold signage. If it had another use to it, like water storage to actually use for the gardens there, I would be in full support of this. But to just have it be that height because of I can't figure out the reason why. And I wonder about the businesses that are surrounding that. Does this will set a precedent for sign height in the surrounding businesses, and all along Government Road there will now require signs to compete with that signs, because as advertising goes and marketing goes, signs are only meant to market companies. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve marketing in that area, but they don't have to market to the highway. And if we're looking for everything along the road to market to the highway, and that everything has to be seen from the highway in that area, it's not going to be a pleasant landscape. So, although I believe that those people deserve a sign for their business, do I think they need a sign that can be seen from downtown at night? Or I just, I don't agree with having a landscape or skyscape change like that for few businesses. I think that having the same signage a bit shorter would be totally fine.
Anybody else? Councillor Elliott?
I'm really struggling with this one, and I mean, I understand the desire for those businesses to want to be seen and to be advertised. I like the design of it, although I think the safety feature of people not being able to climb it are important. And also, I certainly made a motion to reject some signs because they were lit on the highway. And so I don't think they should glow 24/7. I think there should be a way to turn it off in the wee hours so that it's not visible only at night. I just don't understand the justification of its height. And so it's very difficult to support it because I think it could do its job and be like a little bit shorter. And it's unfortunate that it's all or nothing.
Anybody else? I will speak to it. Yeah, I'm struggling on this one too. I want to be fair to the past process, but I have trouble with the height. I think the structure is kind of funky looking. I agree with Councillor Chappelle that, and I remember that conversation. I think there was a committee meeting prior to the council meeting, but that's just my recollection, that talked to actually creating some functionality out of this and not simply just a very monstrously tall sign. I think it will set a precedent. Every other landowner along that area will want something this big, and we're going to have a real challenge. And I think we need to make sure there's a certain criteria that goes along with something as big as this, beyond just a sign. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Blackman, Wolf, Mayor Heintzman opposed. Motion fails. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to DP 464, Lot 58, Legacy Ridge. Nope, wrong. The development variance permit number 129, Dowd Drive. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the District of Squamish. This is a development variance permit application that proposes varying the exterior side setback of the RS1 zone. The subject property is located at the easternmost portion of Dowd Drive, west of District Lots 509 and 510, and directly north of the Garibaldi Springs Golf Course. The subject site is an old gravel extraction and processing site. The subject site was created as part of the Dowd Drive subdivision, also known as Phase 1 of the Skyridge subdivision. This subdivision created 15 single-family lots along the south side of Dowd Drive. As part of the initial subdivision, an 18-meter road dedication was provided adjacent to the subject site as an access to lands beyond clause. This ensured that if the property directly south is ever to be developed, there will be dedicated access from those lands to Dowd Drive. Following this subdivision, Phase 2 of the Skyridge subdivision was completed. This included 15 single-family lots on the other side of Dowd Drive, as well as the school site located directly north of the subject site. The zoning for the site is residential RS1, and its OCP designation is residential neighborhood. This is an overview of the zoning in the area. CD 83 is across the road, while the subject site is surrounded by other RS1 zone properties. The applicant is requesting a variance to the exterior side setback from 7.62 meters to 3.58 meters, a variance of 4.04 meters or 13.25 feet, in order to build a wider single-family home than what is currently permitted under the RS1 zone. Exterior side setbacks in the RS1 zone are larger than interior side setbacks. This is to ensure that there is adequate visibility on corners for traffic, to prevent permanent structures from obstructing the placement of utilities, to protect homeowners from the noise of the adjacent road, and to ensure that the exterior yard setback of the corner home is consistent with the front yard setback of adjacent homes, maintaining consistent frontage along the flanking street. Staff do not recommend the requested variance. Staff note that a conforming structure can be built within the required setbacks. This structure could maximize the allowable floor area ratio of 0.5 and the allowable gross floor area of 348 square meters while achieving 28% lot coverage. Staff note that the structure that would be permitted by the variance if it were to be approved proposes only 26% lot coverage. The applicant could build a structure of equivalent floor area and coverage within the RS1 setbacks. Staff note that the lot coverage of the RS1 zone is 33% inclusive of accessory structures. And staff also note that some non-permanent structures can project into setbacks like decks or terraces. Staff referred the proposed variance to internal departments for comment. The following are a summary of comments from other staff. The site is located on a corner with a challenging grade. Dowd Drive is a collector road with sections that have a grade of 12%, which is typically steeper than a collector road that is anticipated to have a medium to high amount of volume. Dowd Drive will potentially become a connection to the Garibaldi Highlands through District Lot 509 and 510. The road dedication on the above image is adjacent to the subject site, which is in blue. Is meant to provide a connection to the Garibaldi Springs Golf Course in the event that those lands are developed, and Dowd Drive, and now also provides direct access to and from Highway 99. Potential school site is planned directly across from the subject site. So based on these factors, staff anticipate the road dedication and Dowd Drive intersection, highlighted in the yellow intersection symbol on the image above, to be a medium to high traffic intersection. Preserving visibility and line of sight by maintaining an exterior side setback will help mitigate traffic conflicts. The image above is a civil plan for the road dedication. The blue lines outline the 18-meter road right-of-way, and the yellow box is the subject property. The yellow arrow red oval is a cross-section of the proposed road that I'm going to pull up now. So this is the cross-section of the proposed road. The existing road dedication is only 18 meters, which is suboptimal and provides limited room for utilities and traffic movement. The future road will present geotechnical challenges due to bank stabilization works on the east side of the road, which is shown above. This leaves only 9.75 meters on the west side of the road dedication for both travel lanes, a sidewalk, and the siting of all utilities, including gas, BC Hydro kiosks, water meter boxes, street lights, and fire hydrants, with which a permanent structure could interfere. Certain operations like snow storage will also need to occur on the west side of the future road. Maintaining the exterior side setback will ensure that there are no conflicts between district operations and a permanent structure. Legislated and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. No comments were received. The applicant did submit 3 letters of support with their application. One letter referenced a condition in the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 1342/1995, in which the RS1 zone required that a corner lot created by subdivision zoned RS1 be a minimum of 800 square feet. That clause was not retained in the current zoning bylaw number 2200/2011. The letter also references a historical 4.57 meter exterior side setback that only applies to lots that were created prior to the adoption of the 1995 zoning bylaw. This exemption does not apply to lots that have been created since. Staff note that all new lots created under the RS1 zone are subject to a 7.62 meter exterior side setback. 2 additional letters were submitted. They note a concern that a narrow house would not fit the look and feel of the neighborhood. Staff note that the applicant could build an 8.25 meter wide structure that's 27 feet on the lot and conform with the required setbacks. Staff noted on a site visit that of the few homes that have already been built along Dowd Drive, they are of various widths, including 2 narrow homes, one of which is the Skyridge Show Home, which is narrower than the widest home the applicant could build, measuring just over 7 meters wide. So staff recommend the district not authorize the issuance of development variance permit 129.
Thank you. Councillor, are there any questions? Councillor Pryor and Councillor Mason.
Just, can you flip back to the constraints of the proposed future road?
Yeah.
Please, right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of is your reasoning? Is that your reasoning
Yeah,
behind it?
there's not a lot of space to work with.
Yeah.
Engineering has indicated that there isn't a lot of room to place utilities. There's no room on the east side of the room, so everything will need to occur on the west side. Things such as hydro kiosks sometimes need to go in setbacks, so maintaining that setback is important to make sure that a home wouldn't interfere with that.
Okay.
Councillor Riss?
Thank you. So if we approve this, because the house that's proposed is larger than the zoning allows, is a second variance required?
No, so the house is not larger than the zoning would allow, but because this is a corner lot, the zone on that lot. Sorry, let me do this better. So the house that's proposed is smaller than the largest house that could be built on this lot if it were to follow the current setbacks. The applicant is just applying to vary the exterior side setback. So the applicant would be able to build a wider home than the current setbacks allow.
Oh, I see.
On that lot specifically.
But in terms of square footage, it's still...
It's still the same, yeah.
Councillor, are there questions? Don't see any more. The proponent and the members of the public are given the opportunity to be heard during a DVP process, either by written submissions. But I will go out to the public to see if the proponent firstly would like to speak to it. Yeah, come on up and state your name and street address. And you represent yourself, I'm assuming.
Hi, my name is Nabila Kabani, and I'm actually the owner of that lot and the applicant applying for the side setback variance. There's quite a bit of history with this lot. It's my first land purchase. I did work with a realtor. We did go through our due diligence. We came to the city asking for any information about this lot. We were given the layout for the lot, and in all these informations, that side setback was not listed in that lot. I purchased the lot, and then it went to my designer, and in her designing, she discovered this side setback. And as a result, I already paid for the design of the house, her fees, but it's for my family. The lot is, the house that we were going to be building on there would have been about the same size as many of the houses on that street. All those houses have the same rules that apply to each land. It's only that one lot that is not allowing me that extra footage of the side setback. And for reasons that the road may need to access that land, I somehow don't feel that's very fair that this land is being, the side setback is being shortened or lessened as a result of future use of that land that doesn't belong to the city per se. I pay the same amount of taxes. I paid the same price as all the other landowners, and yet I'm not given the same use of my land. So I would consider that you guys take that into factor. I appreciate all the city's efforts. I do understand that there's a school across the street. However, I've been told that the school access will be through a different road. So actually there won't be any traffic going down Dowwood for the school. It's actually before, well, sorry, pardon me, part of Dowwood, but way before my lot. The lot adjacent to me is also a full-size lot, the same lot size as my lot, but she is allowed to build a wider house than I am, and that's just next door to me. So I would ask that council take that into consideration, and the financial loss for me is, even if I was to build a smaller house there or a narrower house that doesn't fit the scheme of Skyridge, the cost of building that smaller house is the same, because all the excavation costs, the foundation costs are all the same. So whether I build a smaller, narrower house there, or I build the house that I want there, that every other lot is required to, or not required to, but has the opportunity to, for me, it just doesn't justify it. So I ask that you take in consideration. I know that on that street there are smaller houses, but that's out of their choice. I don't have that choice. However, everybody has a choice on that street. So I ask for you guys to accept that variance if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just quickly go again to the public. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this DVP? Councillor Elliott?
Just a question to staff. Where are the setbacks for corner lots detailed?
They're in the RS1 zone. So in the zoning, it'll say setbacks, and then it details interior side setback, and then an exterior side setback.
And specifically points to corner lots?
It says an exterior side setback only applies to every corner lot.
And that's clearly articulated in our zoning bylaw.
So yes.
And the road, it is a dedicated road to the west of this particular property.
Yes.
Councillor, any more questions? I will go to the public one more, for the first time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? For a second time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? For a third time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? Just quickly go back to council, see if there's any further questions. I don't see any. Staff have recommended that we not support the motion, but for clarity purposes, regardless of councillor's intent, I will put on the table that we authorize DVP permit 129 as presented for lands legally described as lot 15, section 14, group 1, township 50, U.S. District Plan, EPP 57819, located at 2060 Dowd Drive, Squamish, BC. Seconded by Councillor Chappelle.
So are you
I am moving it.
moving staff's recommendation?
I am moving the motion. Staff's recommendation is to defeat the motion.
And you're supporting the motion?
No, I'm moving the motion.
You're moving the defeating of the...
I'm moving the motion. It's up to council to vote in favor or against the motion.
Okay.
I'll speak to it, sure.
I'm not sure we're on the same page yet.
The motion on the floor, if it passes, is support. If it fails, it's defeat. Staff have recommended that we defeat the motion. And this is a bit of a process thing, not to put negative motions on the floor, so it's clear.
Well, that's why I was having a little difficulty, so.
So
If we support what you've just said, the variance gets pushed out.
it is to give the motion on the table is to give the variance. I'm going to speak in opposition to the motion I put forward.
All right, well, you speak.
I think with any property, it is buyer beware. Our regulations are very clear, and we have them for good reasons, and staff have articulated a number of them with regards to a variety of reasons why we need setbacks. Without the setback, I think there's ample opportunity to build a house that's a fairly large house anyway, 37,000 square feet. 100 square feet? Sorry. And so I do believe without the variance that the landowner, regardless of who it is, can achieve. And when you're purchasing land, you have to be able to adhere to the regulations that are put out. Council does have the discretion to vary those regulations. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Councillor Chappelle.
I'm going to speak in support of the motion. If this was next to other properties, this is going to be next to a road, and the setbacks will make little difference. I don't think it's not like we're pushing it closer to a road, to another house. It's at the very end of the lot. So I will be voting in favor of the motion. I don't think having the setback there is.
We have that corner setback on every property in Squamish. Okay. Councillor Park.
Well, I'm not going to support the motion because, you know, that road does go down to developable land, and because of the side hill on that road. The road can't really sit in the middle of the road right away. It's got to be pushed over a little bit, closer to the house. And I just think that you know, I wouldn't design a house. If a designer starts designing a house and they don't follow the setbacks, then I'm sorry, you know. But because the road's pushed a little tighter over toward the house, I think it should have the standard setback. So I
Anyone
don't
like to,
support it.
anyone like to speak to TV? Councillor Reese.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to support this either. Unfortunate circumstance, but this road is access to, regardless of what might happen with the Garibaldi Springs proposal, there is property at the other end of this little road that was zoned in 2010 for residential use. And so the road requirement has been there for a long time and just realized with the subdivision that created these lots. I agree with Councillor Pryor on his points about the road and the narrowness. The other thing that is affected that we really haven't mentioned but is in the report is the constraint on the sight lines. And this is possibly going to be a fairly medium to high traffic road and connecting onto Dowett Drive, which will be probably a high traffic road eventually. And I think sight lines are going to be important in that neighborhood just as a matter of public safety, so I will not support the variance.
Anyone else like to speak to the variance? Councillor Chappelle?
That's pretty convincing. I didn't think about the sight lines at all, so I would agree with conservation. Having that sort of day.
Bad habit you're getting into.
Bad habit.
I don't see any other hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Everyone opposes? Motion fails. Thank you very much. Moving on, DP 464, Lot 58, Legacy Ridge.
Thank you, Mayor. I will introduce new staff. This is Brian Daly. He is our development and subdivision coordinator. And he will be presenting the development permit 464 application to council for the first time.
Yanis. The subject property is located north side of Mamcram Road and east of the Aristotle subdivision in University Heights, as highlighted here. The subject property is zoned University Housing 1. Permitted uses in the UH1 zone include single unit dwelling, 2-unit dwelling, townhouse dwelling, and apartment dwellings. The Sea to Sky University Sub-Area Plan designates this area for residential housing and requires all single-family subdivisions resulting in lot sizes less than 6,000 square feet be designated as development permit areas and be subject to Development Permit Area 9 guidelines. An unnamed watercourse, a stream, and associated riparian area runs along the north side of the proposed development. A development permit for Development Permit Areas 9 and 11 are required. The objective of Development Permit Area 9, specifically Section C, is to regulate the form and character of intensive residential development within the university lands. The objective of Development Permit Area 11 is protection of riparian areas. A separate development permit will be brought forward in the future to consider riparian area regulation. The OCP designation for this land is University Neighborhoods. Development Permit 464 would allow for a subdivision resulting in 39 single-family bare land strata lots and 1 common property bare land strata lot, Road F. This is a site plan showing the proposed lot layouts and the strata road. A variance is required to Section 4.6B of Schedule B, cul-de-sacs, of the Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw to extend the maximum length measured from the intersecting road to the center of the cul-de-sac bulb for proposed strata road F to 280 meters, a variance of 80 meters. The applicant has provided a letter from Creus Engineering regarding the rationale of the road design and confirmation that an emergency vehicle can safely navigate the road and cul-de-sac bulb. Due to past subdivisions, the steep topography of the site, and the layout of neighboring subdivisions, the only feasible road design is for this road to terminate in a long cul-de-sac. Given the site constraints, and that it has been demonstrated that a Squamish emergency vehicle can safely navigate the cul-de-sac bulb, staff recommend approving the variance. A set of guidelines have been drafted that incorporate the requirements of Section C1 and C3 of residential guidelines and Section A of the general guidelines of Development Permit Area 9 and will be attached to the development permit as scheduled. The guidelines are broken down into 7 sections covering landscape, pathways, materials and color, access and parking, siting of building, relationship to open space, and form and massing. The applicant will also register these requirements as a statutory building scheme to ensure conformance with these guidelines in the future. Pedestrian circulation and connectivity. A nature trail providing access to riparian area is being provided through a 3-meter statutory right-of-way at the end of the cul-de-sac between lots 21 and 22. This is highlighted under A. A public access trail that would connect the Road F development with the future Road G multifamily development is being proposed between lots 32 and 33, highlighted under B. Another public access trail that would connect the Road F development with the Aristotle subdivision is being provided through a 3-meter statutory right-of-way between lots 18 and 19. This is highlighted under C. This right-of-way connects to a district servicing right-of-way in the Aristotle development. The district's right-of-way only includes access to services, but does not currently include public access. The district may need to consider obtaining public access for this right-of-way, as this trail would provide convenient access to the park lot on Aristotle Drive and to the university. The proposed trails are consistent with the Sea to Sky University sub-area plan and will meet DPA 9 trail guidelines. The developer has also agreed to purchase and install certified playground equipment into the existing park on Aristotle Drive prior to subdivision approval. The playground equipment will have a footprint area of no less than 20 feet by 20 feet and will include a covered platform, slide, a swing set, climbing holds and bars, and vertical rails. This is the location of the existing park on Aristotle Drive. Legislated and district processes for this engagement were followed for this application. One request for a public information meeting was received. No public information meeting was held. 4 comments were received that were not in support of the variance. Given that the proposal generally conforms with the Development Permit Area 9 guidelines, staff recommend the council issue the development permit subject to the provisions of registration of right-of-ways and blanket public access right-of-ways over any proposed strata roads, trails, or sidewalks, and the purchase and installation of playground equipment into the existing park on Aristotle Drive. Staff also recommends that given the site topography, layout of neighboring subdivision, and demonstration that an emergency vehicle could safely navigate the cul-de-sac and road, that section 4.6B of Schedule B of the Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw, number 2373/2015, be varied to extend the maximum length of a cul-de-sac for Road F from 200 meters to 280 meters as part of Development Permit 464. And that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the development permit. Any questions?
Councilor Cryer.
I'm having a hard time seeing the one multifamily lot.
It was not shown on here because it's subject to a different application. It would be located adjacent to this, or sorry, right above B.
So just to the north
So
of
not
the
on this.
site.
The north of this
So in
view.
it's the picture of the subdivision to the north?
Yes.
Well, I guess north. Now, is there any habitat on this piece of property?
There is riparian area, but the setbacks have been respected. There's a water course that runs along the north.
Yeah.
And the riparian regulations are being reviewed right now. And I think Chris could speak to any other questions you might have on that.
Yep,
Yes,
go-
there's a steep ravine off the left of the picture you see above you that A would access. And so at this point, this DP doesn't speak to that, but there will be a separate DP letter that wasn't ready yet. We didn't have the information we needed to bring that forward at the same time to put the setbacks in place.
So will it reduce the number of lots?
We don't believe so. The applicant doesn't believe so. We haven't reviewed it yet.
Yeah. And it conforms with the university sub-area plan?
Yes, it does.
A few questions about the subdivision. Was the subdivision done all together, so the land's directly west, essentially where C is over? Was it subdivided at the same time that this subdivision, no subdivision approvals happened on this piece?
No, PLR has been issued.
I guess I'm looking, and it's interesting when you put it in context with the lands next door. Because the end of that cul-de-sac almost lines up exactly with the end of the cul-de-sac on the property next door. And so we need to, you know, I know there's different landowners per se, but we need to be connecting these roads instead of just putting cul-de-sacs. So for example, there's a proposal to put a multifamily where the B is,
Yes, above B.
and the road for that would go in above this road?
Yes.
And how far does that go over, and why isn't that road connecting up with this development, instead of it having extension on the cul-de-sac?
I'll try and answer this, Mayor. We have seen a tentative proposal for the site, let's say map north of this where the B is. The road is as long, it would require a similar variance. They're not ready for that variance yet.
Why wouldn't we put a road through from this subdivision up to the proposed multifamily?
It's physically impossible. The grade change between, if you can see the A and the land above, is probably 15 or 16 vertical meters.
Okay, that is helpful.
So it's physically not possible to connect the road either down to Aristotle or up to, let's say, the multifamily site B. If you go map west or map left, to extend a road, you're building bridges across riparian areas, and I believe Aristotle is, Aristotle continues, there'll be a crossing there, so what you would be doing is building more bridges across riparian areas in difficult, expensive territory that would be difficult and expensive for us to maintain. So we've sort of, by the prior subdivisions, this is really the only viable way of servicing these developments.
I just pulled up the contours. It's helpful
tricky.
in getting my brain around. Council, any other questions for staff at this point? Councillor Elliott?
Well, there's kind of a strange letter in our package that landed on our desk tonight about another riparian part of this site that was possibly bulldozed, and is that?
That's not our opinion. Mr. Wickham and I, we've both seen two reports from an environmental QEP. Neither of those reports identified the area that email says as a riparian area. Was it damp? Did it contain amphibians? Quite possibly, but it's not connected to any riparian areas. It's isolated, and it's not therefore protected under riparian areas regulation. And the site alteration permit's been issued under that regulation. They're entitled to modify that, and they have done. And there's nothing untoward about that at all.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Council, are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll just remind everyone this is a development permit, but there is a variance. And the public and the proponent have a right to be heard and represent either verbally or in written submissions with regards to the variance. The variance is from 200 meters to 280 meters for the length of the cul-de-sac. So in terms of public comment, they're allowed to comment on the variance piece. I might have staff just go over the discretion with regard to the DP on this. We understand our discretion with regard to the variance. What sort of discretion does council have with regard to the DP part of this?
In terms of compliance with the development permit area guidelines, it generally complies with them. There are a number of guidelines here that speak specifically to the buildings, the single family form, which is not where this is at. And the intention of the development permit area was never to regulate each single family home. So what we've done is we've included those in the permit as something that will have to be reviewed at building permit stages as the building permits come in.
So the DP portion of this isn't discretionary necessarily, it meets the guidelines generally?
Yes.
It's just the variance that's at on the topic here today. Just want to make sure that was clear for council. Councillor Elliott.
Sorry, I just remembered some questions because I looked at our fire chief. So, given that parking is always a topic that council likes to discuss, what are regulations about
I
parking?
think the community likes to discuss it more than council.
There's some irony there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there parking on this street on both sides and in the cul-de-sac?
No, no, it's 6 meters wide, it's a 6 meter carriageway, there'll be no parking whatsoever on the road.
Given that this is an area that would be at risk for an interface fire, can 2 fire trucks fit down here and both turn around? And pass each other on the road? And so
maybe you have the fire chief speak to the fire.
Yeah, I
related.
just want to make sure that the drawing in our package says that a fire truck can turn around. If there's an interface fire, I suspect there wouldn't be 1 fire truck, but possibly 2, so.
Chief Stoner.
Yes, Chief Stoner. Okay, so 6 meters? I'm doing math, sorry. 6, 18, yeah, two fire trucks could get beside each other coming down, assuming there was no parking on either side.
And the road is proposed no parking on the road.
Yes, you cannot park on the 6 meter carriageway.
And it's a strata road though?
Yes,
Do we have the ability to ticket on a strata road?
with the permission of the strata, yes. But we would require the permission of the strata. Is that correct, Ms. Arthurs? Ms. Arthurs is
I'd have to
not
look
backing
into
me.
that.
We have, sorry, on the wildfire, have you seen the wildfire interface plan? Have we shared that with you?
For this? No.
We will do. The applicant has prepared a wildland interface review and plan for both this and the upper parcel, so we'll make sure that Chief Stoner gets a look at that ASAP.
I'm still curious about how we ensure that these roads stay open. Because I know in my own strata, people don't park where they're supposed to park. And our strata sometimes enforces that and sometimes doesn't.
It becomes a public safety issue.
Yeah.
And that's, in most of the stratas around, even on the strata roads, we don't have the ability to go in and do enforcement. Everything's enforced through the strata, but what we can do is bring action against the strata if they're not paying attention. They're creating a life safety risk as a result of some of the actions. But as far as our bylaw officers going in and ticketing, it's very unlikely. And we know that from, for example, Eagle Wind.
And more people, so
Just a follow-up, is there a way to put a restriction in the DP that doesn't explicitly states that you can't park on the road?
We'll let you think about that. You may have to ruminate on that.
I don't think, I'll answer. I don't think there is, because that's not part of the development permit area guidelines, unless.
I can add to that.
Go ahead.
We are asking for public access right-of-way to be established over this strata road and sidewalks, because it's part of the connectivity to adjacent developments. We could, into that statutory right-of-way, include the requirement as coming out of part of the condition of this variance, that there be no parking on the strata road and that the no parking signs be posted when this road is installed, and that they be maintained there.
Councilor Chappelle.
Visitor parking,
Pardon me?
visitor parking on the driveway is enough to support a bunch of cars, happens when there's visitors.
Yes, they're adequate to provide the required zoning bylaw parking.
Which is 2 cars.
Yes.
And
No space for visitors.
It's not a
When they have a
requirement.
barbecue, they can't park on this cul-de-sac. Councilor Riz.
Thank you. Through the staff, if we are going to have, would it be a covenant on the title to the strata property that you just mentioned?
It could be a right-of-way. We will be asking for a right-of-way.
For the public access and so forth?
Public access. In that right-of-way, there could be conditions of what has to be maintained.
And could it also contain a provision that the district staff has the authority to go on title on the property to enforce those bylaws?
We could look.
Probably not.
We could look.
We will look into it.
There may be a mechanism. We'll look at that.
Just so there's no question about getting consent in the future. I think it is important. I mean, these, otherwise it would have to be a district road, much wider, dedicated, and that creates some other issues. So, but if we are going to allow these strata roads, then I think we want to be able to go on and enforce our traffic bylaws.
Council, questions for clarification purposes? Councillor Clark.
I'm just surprised to see Malcolm Road going all the way up there, but, so, on this, to Susan's point, where do guests park? On Malcolm Road?
On driveways or on driveways?
On driveways or,
There's no, I don't believe there's much parking in Mount
There
Carmel.
is parking on the east side of Mount Carmel, not on the west.
but, I mean, as road after road after road goes in, at some point, do we ask for a parking lot?
We don't have any regulatory authority to do that.
Councillor Blackman Wolf, Councillor.
Yeah, well, and I suspect that that's probably some of the thinking that goes behind having the 200-meter maximum for a cul-de-sac on a strata road. So, I mean, the applicant could certainly only just build up to the 200, and guess what? There would be ample room for some visitor parking lot, but fewer lots to be sold. So, just to make that clear.
Yes, Mr. Buxton.
The UH1 zoning allows for a variety of housing forms. If you terminate the cul-de-sac, you put a more dense housing form at the end of the cul-de-sac, thereby likely making the problem a little worse.
Is the proponent in the audience, and please come up, state your name and street address if you represent the proponent, so welcome.
Hi, it's Carolyn Lamont, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to address this application. I know we've had a long day and night, so I'm going to be fairly brief, but I really want to focus on sort of two key components. And I just wanted to, I think you guys are interested in context a bit. So I'll just
That'd be
ask
great,
this,
yeah.
is
And
that okay, through staff?
I did want to maybe point out for staff is, it's great to have the context of, and we've asked this before, to make sure we have the context of the adjacent properties and reports, as it helps, or I had to go on to our GIS to figure out exactly where this was.
So,
Thank you.
and I think often the way it's turned, I don't know, I always look my north arrow up, so it's a little hard to understand. Just to note that this, what I passed around, is just to show that the subject lands have always been contemplated for development. That's an excerpt from the sub-area plan. And we've worked with staff on the DPA guidelines for form and character development, which will further enhance through a statutory building scheme. I think we've more than exceeded what those guidelines are, so it will be a nice development. I'm going to hand out one other, because I think this is getting a little bit to where you guys were about what is going on to the same. Yeah, and the development, we're lucky we have Prius working with us, engineering, and they previously worked with, or the previous owners worked with Webster Engineering. And before the Aristotle subdivision, and some of you may recall, or maybe not because it was a subdivision issue, they did ask to prove out a bit of how the roads would work. And the most important aspect of it is that it was the riparian area. That is why there's the proposed cul-de-sac. So you can see how there are proposed some others. As a matter of fact, Aristotle is a cul-de-sac, if you look at it. So the primary intent for the variance, or the whole design that was undertaken, I think this was about in the mid-2000s, was that the importance of preserving that ravine area that you talked about. I'll just touch on that briefly, is we have received approval from the provincial government with the RAR, and as Mr. Wickham mentioned, it's with staff right now, and you'll see it, I guess, at the next possible meeting. I also wanted to note that originally the proposal was for 39. Sorry, our current proposal is just for 39 single-family lots on the lower half. The upper one that I think you were looking at in the context plan actually previously had, I think, total the two sites were 55 single-family, and we've moved it up to, it'll be 79 units. We've taken smaller lots, which in turn we got hit with doing a DP, area for form and character, because our lots are smaller than 6,000 square feet. So we believe that the district was interested in smaller lots. And then the upper site that we will come back in with a development permit will be multifamily, 40 multifamily units right now. That's the concept. But still, we haven't even done pre-app stuff on that. I want to talk a little bit about the parking issue you talked about. Unlike some areas like Amelpath, where you can't park in front of your garage, these will allow you to park cars before your garage plus your garage. So there is that opportunity. And I understand from staff that laybys weren't supported by staff, and perhaps it has to do with firefighting. I'm not sure, but I think that was originally part of our proposal. We have alternatively put in, which is through the DP, is the stormwater drainage, the, what are they called? The sustainable bioswales, thank you, bioswales to be along the area of the road. So those are just what I wanted to touch on. As Mr. Buxton noted, we do have a PLR and we're working through a lot of the issues. We have met the subdivision servicing bylaw requirements, and the issue with going to a longer cul-de-sac would be the emergency access that you talked about. And we've had our engineers draw it so the turnaround can happen, and it sounds like there's the two-way as well. I think if there's anything else I just want to talk to you. I don't think we'd have any objection with that right-of-way or the easement that Mr. Welenis is proposing. I think that probably is, from our, as being a good development, that we really don't want to litter with cars on both sides of it either. I do have Kristen Golly here, who's managing the application focused more on subdivision, right there, and Steve Williamson from Creus, who's our engineer, if you had any technical questions that we can help you with. I think that's about it for now.
Very much.
Question?
I was going to go, let me go to public and then.
Just on this map.
Let me go to the public. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this variance on the DP? Yeah, come on up, state your street name and address. Yes. Not your street name. Or your stripper name, or anything like that. What? We want that information. Just your name and your street address.
Okay,
and
and Carol.
Yes. A business or it's been a
getting late, is it? So I'm Caroline DePetzi. I own property on Aristotle Drive. So we've seen the development already. Kind of things seem to be happening really quick there. So I'm not new to this. I don't know how much I understand of it. But my question is why, if we had a 200-meter road, why don't we plan for a development that's on a 200-meter road? Why do we suddenly develop all these, or propose all these lots on a 280-meter road while the road should be only 200 meters? That's just, I don't know if that's a fair question,
yeah,
but.
And I think from a process point of view, and I'll take a stab at it, maybe staff want to, any landowner can make an application for a variance. Okay. It's in their rights to do so. Yeah. And then council has the ability to either grant the variance or not. So the landowner in this case is trying to maximize their land and is saying, we've got some constraints. We can't do a turnaround because of geography. We have riparian areas. We don't want to put another bridge here and do this and that. So they're saying, we'd like to extend it. So anyone has the opportunity to ask for a variance, and it's up to council's discretion whether or not we give it or not. So that's the process we're going through now. Is that fair enough? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, my thoughts are more to, there's no like bus route plan, so more people living there, bus route, the road, like right now we're all using the boulevard, which is starting to be really crazy. So what are the thoughts around that? And parking was a good, I know Aristotle already, people own more than 2 cars per lot of 6,000 square feet, it's busy. Yeah. So anyways, that was just my comment.
Yeah, and it's not specific to the DVPs, but I appreciate your questions. There is a overall master plan for this area, correct?
There is, yes, there's a
And is
survey
there a
plan.
tipping point in terms of when and if the Park Road gets paved or not, depending on how many people are up there, or is there anything like that in the master plan?
The Park Road?
Oh, Mamquam.
Oh, Mamquam Road.
Mamquam Road, Park Road, Mamquam Road, same thing.
I'm not sure. You already know.
Not that I'm aware of, but there's a threshold or a requirement at which that has to be done.
No, there is not. It's, at this point, it's been, the Mamquam Road will continue to be gravel down to the golf course.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak to this public hearing? Public, the variance on the DP? Don't see anyone. Councillor Crowley, you had a question for Ms. Lamont?
Well, I just, I'm looking at this map here, and I can see all the green spaces. It's a future market housing, Is all the green future market housing?
Yes.
Is any of it owned by the university?
There's some flex lands that are owned by the university. Most of it's not.
Some of the lands are owned, but they're around the university.
Yeah, is there, I mean, based on,
But we're specifically talking about a variance, nothing else.
okay, I just was kind of surprised to see how much.
Yeah, and you can ask, but the public part of the hearing, what we're doing right now is a variance on a DP. The only discretionary piece is the variance. Okay, no, I see no more hands from Councillor Elliott.
So in the drawing by Creus Engineering, which shows two fire trucks side by side on the road, is that right out to the sidewalk here?
Yeah, so it's within the road right of way still, but it's still being outlined as two can pass.
Yeah.
So that answer's not recorded.
The public can't.
There's only one sidewalk on the north side of the, only two sidewalks.
There's just one.
There's one sidewalk on the north side and it's separated from the curb by a swing or a slight ditch. So the vehicles aren't going to immediately, it's not like sidewalk, curb, gutter, asphalt, it's asphalt, curb, gutter, boulevard, sidewalk on one side.
So it's to the curb. Those are two trucks to the curb.
Yeah, it'll be tight, it'll be snug.
Okay. And Ms. Lamont talked about laybys or pullouts for parking. Those don't exist in this plan. Is there room for those?
We've never seen or discussed laybys on any of the plans.
And that would be a subdivision issue. But it could it be in theory a condition of granting a variance on something?
I believe it could, yes.
And I don't think we want to necessarily get descriptive, but I think parking is already an issue up there. Zero visitor or guest or someone, your family visiting from Saskatoon, there's nowhere for them to park at this point. Yes.
So I'm just trying to figure out how we address life safety issues when, say there's a large house fire up there and we have a couple of trucks and then an ambulance needs to come, and how all these vehicles are going to be accommodated in a narrow road with potentially people parking on it, because we know if someone has a party, they're not all fitting in someone's driveway. And so if we're going to extend this road to that length, I want to make sure that we can do it safely and that we're anticipating what goes wrong when we build way up into the forest like that. So, anyway, I'm not sure how I have those concerns addressed in this variance on the DP.
Councilor Crowley?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Heinzman. I like the idea of getting an understanding of what variances we can ask for on the variance, or what amenity kind of thing, because when you take a 600-foot long road and make it as a 840-foot road, it does make it more concerning for fire safety. You know, it's now 1/3 longer. It's 200 meters to a cul-de-sac. We're going 280 meters to a cul-de-sac. So that's compounding the, but if we can ask for some variances to allow for,
I think variances is the wrong word, but
Yeah.
if we have safety issues, we have parking issues, in order to grant the variance, we'd like to see some of the parking and safety issues dealt with. How would we go about that process of determining that?
Council could set conditions that address its concerns. So in order to address the parking concern, we require X. In order to address the safety concern, we require that the applicant do Y.
would you come back with some ideas? I mean, we can't figure that out right now.
Councillor Blackman-Wolf?
So I think it's important to keep in mind that, I mean, again, here we are trying to do variances and go off script as far as what our policy is. And I don't understand or agree with the rationale behind it. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable if the applicant wanted to build a 200-foot road, they could do that. And yes, they could put in density, but guess what? They put in density, then they'd have to build a parking garage for their units. So, you know, those things would probably be addressed. So I'm really uncomfortable with this kind of extremely long cul-de-sacs and, you know, squeezing out every last little square inch. I don't think the quality of life in these areas will be good. And I suspect that there will be significant challenges into the future that the district will be left dealing with. So I'm not going to support the variance.
And we're still in the public part of the process, so we have, yeah.
Just to Councilor Jason's point though, so you're suggesting a less road with density at the end?
Well, I'm just...
We're talking to the variance.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't
Just to clarify, I'm just saying that from my understanding of the application is that if the road was only 200 meters, they wouldn't be coming to us for a variance, and therefore they would...
Wouldn't even be in the chamber. Yeah, I'll go back out to the public. Come on up.
I would say that, as you can see on the land use plan, that if we weren't given this variance, we would do large lots.
Large lots and just a 200
We have the
meter.
zoning, yeah.
And just a 200 meter.
There's not a maximum size, I don't believe, of lots. So we would have larger lots, which they are quite spectacular, to be honest.
And a lot fewer.
A lot fewer off the, yeah. So we still could do the 200 meter cul-de-sac, but we would then put larger lots on the
With long driveways.
You could have long driveways, or they'd just be big lots.
We have a map that shows where the 200, how far over the 200?
It's approximately.
And we'd still need a roundabout at the end, correct? Okay, question?
So, has our fire chief reviewed this?
This was referred to the fire department as part of the subdivision process.
Yes.
And the fire chief, according to report, didn't outline any major, I mean, staff wouldn't recommend supporting it if the fire chief said it wasn't doable. Correct?
Yeah, I did talk to Deputy Chief Foot, and he did see this through the development services. He did see that there was a cul-de-sac there, and so he did give his input.
Yeah, please come up, state your name, street address, and if you represent yourself, business, or an organization.
Steve Williamson, I represent Creus Engineering.
I just.
Who works for the proponent? Just
Pardon me?
who works, who is
Yes, who work
contracted
for the developer, yeah,
Thank you.
Cornerstone Developments. Just with regards to the life safety with the turnaround, you know, sometimes the longer cul-de-sacs aren't desirable, the 280 meters say, because if there is an issue with the road going in, you can't get emergency services down and you create more problems. Part of the thing to deal with that is you have the pedestrian access, which the right-of-way will be registered. Based on geotechnical reports, other reports, you know, the chances of a catastrophic failure on this road that will prevent emergency vehicles from getting through is very, very rare. There's no rockfall condition hazards, etc. The actual cul-de-sac itself is a 3% grade, which is very minimal, very desirable for the fire trucks. Trucks can easily turn. It meets DOS standards. We haven't had the fire department out on site because it's designed to DOS standards. There's many cul-de-sacs like it in the district, so it meets all of those requirements. And in terms of variance for the length, I mean, through 2002 and 2006, there was intense scrutiny and development through these Quest lands. And this has always been part of the development. That design road has been in there since it was issued for PLA in 2006. So this isn't, the district has seen this for many, many years. And Aristotle is the same length, but designed to go through. So the works are constructed through the riparian area, and that one goes through. But due to the topography, as we discussed between F and G, it's impossible to connect them, and we do not want to go and disturb that riparian area. All the setbacks are being adhered to, and as I stated, you know, we can get this under the 6,000 square feet lots, and we support the development and the design. Thank you.
Through the staff, do we have other cul-de-sacs this long that have been granted variances? Or have we granted variance on cul-de-sacs previously?
We have granted variances on cul-de-sacs. The one that comes to mind since I've been here was the one off of Depot Road. It was a subdivision a few years ago right by the Wonderland campground, which require a variance. We'd have to go back and look at the details of that variance.
Yeah, please come up. You've already stated your name,
Am I-
already stated
am I
your
allowed
grade.
a second comment? Just a question, is there anticipated suites in the houses, so other tenants? Because I know on Aristotle,
What
there's
does
lots
the
of
zoning
suites.
permit, and what does, are there parameters under the UH1 zoning that prohibits or permits?
Yes, the zone permits secondary suites, and with that, there would be a requirement for additional parking for the suite.
And does it permit carriage house?
It does permit a carriage house, although
Both
the
one
size,
or the other, correct?
yes, the size of these lots may not lend itself, and the fact that there's no rear access to them may not lend itself to carriage houses, but it does permit it.
The zoning does permit it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to the public one more time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to the variance of this DP? So for a second time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the variance of this development permit? For the third time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the variance on the DP? I don't believe there's anybody else. Council, any last minute questions?
Oh, not questions.
Go ahead.
I'm with Jason on this one.
Well, let's put a motion on the floor. As usual, we want it, you'll move it, I'll second it. You want to speak to your motion, Councilor Scott?
I recognize there's a lot of constraints with this. I would agree with some of the comments that are made, but just specifically to the variance, I don't mind the variance. I definitely prefer to see the smaller lots up here than the monster lots. I think that in the future, we really have to look to having some sort of parking solution. Visitor parking is going to be the biggest issue that we have. Just having two-car parking in those areas is not going to be adequate, and I would like to actually see a lot taken out and visitor parking put in to the subdivision. I think it'd be beneficial to make it a more livable subdivision, because I just think that two-car parking is going to be used up very quickly in that subdivision, and the amount of cars that are going to be up there is going to be quite a bit, and would serve the development and the livability to actually have some visitor parking put in to these subdevelopments as they come forward.
That's a good question through the staff. There's 50, how many lots are here?
39.
39. In a 39 lot strata, how many visitor parking would be, for example, if it was townhomes or any kind of strata? What would a visitor parking requirement be?
Visitor parking requirements normally go by 0.25 per unit. So every 4
So
units.
10.
Yeah.
So in theory, we could say a condition of the variance is that 10 visitor parking stalls be found on throughout the subdivision.
That could be a condition, yes.
When we're done with this, I'll move that up.
I think we'd have to move an amendment to the motion.
Can I move an amendment to my own motion?
Sure.
I will put forward a motion restricted to, that a covenant be put on, it's been a long day.
As a condition of the variance,
That a covenant be put on
10
10 visitor parking stalls be accommodated in this
throughout
subdivision.
the subdivision. Seconded?
Well, I'll second it to comment on it.
Sure.
I mean,
Do
I don't
you
quite-
want to speak to your amendment, Councillor Strong, or have you already?
I think
spoken?
I just did.
Councillor?
Okay, well, I'm almost there, but when you say 4 parking stalls, 1 parking stall for every 4 units, in townhomes, there's no carriage houses and there's no suites. So 10's okay, but 20 might be better. I like what the mayor said about getting something, you know, I mean, extending this is basically adding, well, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, 15, 16 lots. So we're extending this road, adding 16 lots. We're creating a parking, potentially hazard for fire trucks, all these potential problems. I mean, people from the neighborhood.
How are you
there.
speaking against the amendment? The amendment is to require.
I'm speaking against it because I don't think it's enough parking. We're going a little too fast on the number there.
Councillor Blackman will.
Yeah, I'm still going to speak against the amendment. I think it's still trying to squeeze too much into a very challenging area. And I reflect on that in terms of what type of services are available in the neighborhood. And in fact, if the applicant is, you know, more partial or able to do a larger lot subdivision in this area, that I think, in my view, that seems to be more appropriate than this type of numbers. I mean, this is a lot. This is 39. It's bigger than what we just approved in Brackendale. And Brackendale definitely is more centrally located in this area. So,
Just to differentiate, Bracknell was a rezoning, this is a variance
Correct.
on a rule, so just want to make sure we're not comparing apples to apples in terms of decision-making process. Jonas?
Just in terms of area comments, the university sub-area plan does envision quite a sizable development in the university neighborhood with future services, so just a comment on that.
Councillor Strong?
Thank you, and I agree with a lot of the comments that are made here, but a lot of the issues are policy issues, again, with our parking bylaws and .25. You know, like, I
We're
really
speaking
think
to
we
the
should-
amendment.
Yeah, but putting forward that amendment, and the problems with Council Pryor wanting 20 instead of 10, it's not in our policy. If we want to change that policy, we need to change the policy, not for the required.
We can ask for whatever we want.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Okay, I'm going to speak in favor of the amendment. Speaking to the addition of visitor parking, I think that's actually pretty important in this situation. It will help alleviate some of the potential problems with some conflict potentially with emergency services and others. I think it would also make it actually a more desirable place to live, a little more livable, because as it stands right now, you couldn't have a barbecue and actually have anyone over. They park at the university and ride their bike, maybe that's okay. But anyway, so I think in terms of the variance or the amendment to the motion, I can support the amendment. Go ahead.
You are in overtime.
We're all on overtime.
And I'm going to support the amendment too. I been wavering around this, and frankly, without that amendment, I would have voted against the variance because I don't like the design of these without visitor parking. I take the point that these units might have suites in them, but that would require, if I understand the zoning bylaw correctly, larger driveway space, and looking at those, practically the whole front yard at the end of having to be paved, because you have to provide the parking for the suite as well. Visitor parking is a huge issue. I don't live in a strata street, but it's an issue on my street with a narrow road. And I think if we're going to design these or allow these to happen, it is essentially very, very close to multifamily. When you start packing in small lots like that, and you're looking at the density form. And with multifamily, we do require visitor parking. I don't know why we don't require it here. So with this amendment, I can support this, so I will support the amendment.
Councillor Kent.
I can support this with the amendment.
Well, we're just talking to the amendment right now.
Yeah, like I said, I can support this with the amendment.
Or support the amendment. We're not speaking to the main motion.
But I think the proponent should be aware that there's a lot more of this type of development going on up in there, and that this, if you're going to go with this kind of density, you should consider the additional parking on those other developments.
So on the amendment, I'm going to call the question.
Oh, one question.
On the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment.
Go ahead.
Can you bring the topographical map up on there? I just heard a comment about with these large lots.
Sorry, this one?
Topographical showing the side hill.
Side hill.
I mean, some of these don't have a backyard, they've got a
Not
cliff,
sure.
and some of them don't have a front yard, they've got a cliff, so. I'm just saying that
The amendment is to add, that they be required to add 10 visitor parking stalls. On the amendment, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Back-and-Wolf opposes. And Councillor Pryor opposes. Motion carries. So there's a motion as amended, and the motion is currently to grant the variance conditional upon provision of 10 visitor parking stalls. I will call the question on the main motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Black-and-Wolf opposes. Councillor Pryor opposes. Motion carries. That was,
Thank you.
we're having a great time today. And that was all that stuff. Bylaws, first 3 readings. District of Squamish Solid Waste Facility Bylaw number 2547. We have a really short presentation, Council. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shannon White. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at the District of Squamish. And we are here today to speak about the Solid Waste Bylaw number 2547, 2017. We're seeking the first 3 readings of this bylaw, and as well as the related amendments to the Notice Enforcement Bylaw and the Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw. And the new Solid Waste Bylaw 2547 would repeal and replace the current existing.
We don't use repeal and replace in this.
Great.
Way too dangerous. Political.
Straight that from the notes. So,
we got a really big bylaw, bigly bylaw.
That being said, thanks, that's okay. At the Committee of Whole on July 18th, 2017, staff brought forward the proposed new bylaw for council feedback, and the key elements include the requirement of multi-stream separation of waste by all properties, in particular the ICI sector, multifamily homes, temporary users and events, that staff and tenants, employees are educated about how the separation works, and that garbage is placed in in transparent bags
with an allowance for dark privacy bags. The purpose of this bylaw, new bylaw change, is really to extend the lifespan of the Squamish landfill, as well as increase the diversion of recyclables and organics from the landfill, assist in our community well-being through the reduced greenhouse gases that are produced at the landfill, especially by organic waste, and then also making a significant step forward in towards council's goals of becoming a zero waste community. The changes, as I mentioned, just to provide a little bit more detail between the current bylaw and the new bylaw, is the multi-stream separation, increasing the mixed waste threshold to 20% with a 5% decrease, an annual 5% decrease. Clear bags being required for garbage produced at the ICI sector locations, multifamily homes, events, and temporary users. Refining the timing of on-street set-out for curbside collection totes. Having a limit of 5 mattresses accepted at the landfill at one time, so that is encouraging residents to recycle their mattresses, as well as refining the definitions in the bylaw to align more so with that of the SLRD's Solid Waste Management Plan, and then extending the scope of the bylaw from residential curbside collection to the ICI and multifamily homes. After our presentation on July 18th, we further refined the bylaw, and that is what is being presented today. So the changes that have been made since you saw the bylaw on July 18th is that clear bags will be required for garbage for everyone except for residential users who are part of the curbside collection program. So that includes or entails the ICI, so businesses, institutions, multifamily homes, events, and temporary users. The wording around privacy bag has been changed to opaque bag. The threshold for that only 10% of garbage can be in an opaque bag has now includes the exclusion of diapers and household pet waste. There's an annual reduction of the mixed waste threshold from 20% by 5% annually is now explicit in the bylaw. The timing for the streets set out for the curbside collection containers has been refined, and I'll speak to that in the next slide. And there's been a few minor technical revisions, for example, just harmonizing with the traffic bylaw about where totes can be located, and a few small inclusion about pedestrians and cyclists. I wanted to speak briefly to the timing for container set out. So based on our experience in Squamish, as well as data from other communities such as Coquitlam, staff do believe that it needs to be included explicitly in the bylaw about and align with the wildlife attractant bylaw that totes are put out on the day of and not the night, so that they aren't put out the night before. I've included here in this slide the wording around what is in our current bylaw and then also the proposed wording. So it's been refined, it's a little bit hopefully clearer since the July 18th presentation. And really the reasoning behind this is that there are peer-reviewed studies that show bears are more active during the day in the wild. However, in urban areas, they seek out food at night, often to be undisturbed. As well, the real ultimate goal is to prevent the initial success of accessing food source. The discussion around curbside collections, whether it's outside a house or at the curb, what is the difference? The idea is really to reduce the ease of access to attractants. When they're at the curb, the bears in particular, but wildlife is able to access the totes easier, so it's very much, yes, they still do access them when they're at the house, but this is really just trying to reduce that temptation that's at the street.
additional bylaw amendments that we are also requesting is the notice enforcement bylaw to designate the bylaw enforcement officers. So the addition is the sustainability coordinator would be able to enforce this bylaw. And then the amendment to the municipal ticket information bylaw is to, again, add the sustainability coordinator as someone who's able to enforce this bylaw. As well, there was an addition of the sewer use bylaw and the respective enforcement officers. And with that, I have recommendations.
Okay. Just to help expedite this, I'm going to move that we give first, second, and third reading to the solid waste utility bylaw number 2547 as very second. Seconded by Councillor Blackmore. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Carr.
Two questions. Is the list of recyclable materials now reflecting the discussion from yesterday? Recycled PC?
Yes, it was amended at the beginning of like several weeks ago, yes.
Okay, and then second question, last time we talked about this, Councillor Pryor was asking about if he pulls invasive species out of his backyard, where is the best place to put them? Not in the organic bin, but in the garbage. And 7.6 says no person shall dispose of invasive species at the landfill. So is that in contradiction to? So I know.
That's a good question. We just want.
So I just want that clarity.
So we, at the discretion of as directed by the manager, so we do explicitly say at the landfill that we do take invasive species. So we could remove that clause.
So in our schedule of things that aren't permitted, soil contaminated with invasive species is not permitted. And I just want to make sure that there's clarity for residents who use the collection system that they can dispose of invasive species in their garbage. And so this makes it not quite as clear as that.
Yeah, we can remove this because
I think it's an excellent point. I think the intent probably when this was originally put in, this is a legacy clause. I think the intent was probably to give the control to the manager of landfill on which invasive species to allow and under what circumstances. So just it simply places that control at the staff level and
so what do you suggest we take out to clarify this?
I guess in my experience, putting our heads together quickly here, in my experience, I don't think we've had a situation where we say no to the invasive species in landfill.
We don't deny invasive
Okay, so you just scratch
so
that line?
we can remove 7.6 as an amendment to the...
Just to clarify, if a developer had invasive species on their land, they couldn't bring like a whole truckload to the landfill. That's captured in the schedule that says not permitted. Is that right? I just don't want to take away our discretion to reject truckloads of invasive species that would fill up our landfill. So that's the balance here. So I want a phrase that enables it for residents pulling out whatever.
Maybe one of you can work on some language for us to consider as we go through our debate here.
Can I speak to it? Just that, unfortunately, at this point in time, there is no other option for proper disposal of invasive species in Squamish. Really within the corridor, composting facilities do not want to take them, and the landfill really is the site. So we do currently accept plant material of invasive species from Scotch broom and holly, blackberry, etc., from developers.
On a per ton basis, on the same rate as
yard waste. Yes.
So to make sure that's clear in the bylaw, do you recommend taking anything out?
I mean, the choice before us is just talking out loud here.
Well, why don't you not talk it out loud?
Okay.
Just come up with something that we can consider, and I'll go to the next person in the conversation. We'll come back to it. Councillor Carr.
Well, there was one, can you just back up one slide, please? additional sewer use bylaw and additional sustainable board, is that the same person, or is this two people?
I can speak to that. Unfortunately, when the sewer use bylaw came to council a couple of months ago, in the amendment to the municipal ticket information bylaw, there were 2 amendments required. We only captured one of them. We missed a line in Schedule A that indicated who the enforcement officers were for the sewer use bylaw. In this case, the enforcement officer that's being added would be the Director of Public Works and bylaw officers. So this is actually unrelated to the solid waste bylaw.
Yeah, it's a separate motion. So on the solid waste bylaw, any more questions? How do you suggest we deal with the issue outlined by Councillor Elliott?
So
Take out 7.6?
Our preference is to leave it as is because it gives us discretion for future without coming back to council and going through this process. And then the requirement would be to be clear through social media or other communications with people and through the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council, etc., what our current policy is, and that absolutely individual homeowners in their totes can put invasive species, and that is allowed by the manager of the land.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need any amendments to the motion on the table. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Your second piece of that was the Visitor Squamish Notice Enforcement Bylaw number. Notice Enforcement Bylaw. So the corresponding ticket notice. And is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Blackamoor, second by Councillor Elliott. Any questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. And that the Squamish Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw amendment bylaw be given first 3 readings. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Chappell. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then the additional homework, the one that we missed. We have to do that one?
No, I think we had both the amendments were
already incorporated.
Yeah. Both changed
Okay.
in one amendment.
I got confused. Sorry. We're good. We're good. We're good. Thank you. So we are down to 5B. Is that right? 5B1? Squamish zoning bylaw adoption of the 1009 Aspen Road. Is there a motion to adopt? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And CD Zone 88 be adopted. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We dealt with the first correspondence. And then there's a correspondence tree bylaw and invocation of wildfire. I'll move that we refer to staff. I believe Alexis has already responded to this, but we'll move to staff for record. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And there's a letter from the Sea to Sky Forestry Center, tree removal from Mr. Wallace, President of the Sea to Sky Forestry Center. I'm trying to understand exactly what they're asking. I think they're asking to be able to cut the trees down immediately. And I'm just trying to find the letter. Do you have the letter? I see Mr. Anderson in the room. Do you want to speak to this, Mr. Anderson?
Certainly.
I said there's a late item. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. Eric Anderson. I'm here on behalf of Mike Wallace, our Site and Building Committee Chair, and Ken Pickering, our President, and others who could be here this evening. So we hope it's, trust it's straightforward. With the building activity next door to our site with the Crystal Tourum Aerial Ropes facility, in future it will be more costly and onerous in operation to remove what are in fact hazard trees already. They are maturing cottonwoods, and they do collect a little bit of litter and so on. And we believe that the site could be improved as well as made more safe if we take out those trees sooner rather than later. And We also have a second request, and that is that the garbage containers be removed from our lease area. And it's related to the other item that Mr. Wallace has mentioned, that we'd like to move a steam donkey or some other piece of equipment, or public art in fact, to that same location that is just immediately across the road in the crosswalk. The steam donkey we wish to move is in fact in the Logger Sports Arena, and it has some safety issues at its present site. We'd like to address those in our relocation. Our goal is to create a little bit of a hub for pedestrians, safely away from Loggers Lane, for self-guided tours, for walking tours, that sort of thing. But to come back to our main request, removing those trees later, once we have the operation next door in full go, would be more onerous and costly, and therefore we're requesting permission to remove those trees at this time. There are 3 larger cottonwoods and other vegetation around.
And the intention was to always remove them, that was always the plan?
Yes, that's correct. In the end, we do need to take advantage of our full site for our parking requirements, among other things. And it is a courtyard that would be used for other kinds of programming, for schools programs and that sort of thing. Yes.
Do you have any questions there,
Yeah, sorry if I didn't quite understand. You want to move another piece of equipment out to the corner, or you want to take one away?
We are in fact suggesting to move the logging arch, which is currently on the southerly side of the site, into a more prominent location within our lease area, well away from Loggers Lane still, however. Secondly, we are looking at the area where approximately where the garbage containers are today is an area immediately across from the crosswalk and into our lease area, where we'd like to use as a bit of a hub for pedestrians and visitors to the site for the programming that we'd like to get underway already. And so there are 2 steam donkeys at the Logger Sports Grounds, and formerly they were at the Shannon Falls Outdoor Museum. One of them needs a little bit of TLC and help, safety issues as well. And that's the one we'd like to move there.
So just to staff, any thought has been put to relocating the garbage? Do we have, like, I'm not sure how far they have to move to get to the lease area. Is there a better location for this?
Through you, Mayor, we're going to have a site visit with the Forestry Society and Camilla and see what's a better fit on the site.
Councillor, see any problem with this? Anyone want to move that we, under section 4B, that we agree to Forestry Society removing the trees, and staff will relocate the garbage from their lease area? Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Carr. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. A little bit more forewarning, so we're not doing this at 8:30 on the last minute, the day before our break.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Heinzman?
Yes.
Can we also get a motion from council as landowner for landowner consent for the site alteration permit, to apply for the site alteration permit?
Absolutely. Move consent for issue site alteration permit to, I guess, to the Forestry Society.
That's right.
Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Kent. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have crossed our T's and dotted our I's.
That's right.
I keep losing. I have too many papers. I try to go paperless, and I bet this should last a month. Next up, we have a whole bunch of late correspondence, as well as some that were on there. Looking for council to decide if they want to pull any of those. A lot of them were correspondence that I've responded to already and staff has responded to already. Seeing no hands, I'll look for a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Spell, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There is a committee recommendation from this morning that the district accept the proposal from Whistler Adaptive for provision of leisure buddies in the amount of $15,000 plus tax annually for 1-year term. And it's slightly modified from earlier today just to make it more clear, and that no registration fee be associated with the after program registration, and that the program be reassessed after 1 year. And further, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That's the end of our agenda.
All right.
Motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.